Hello and welcome to Random Dialogues 30. It's Wednesday the 19th of March 2025 and we're live now for the next hour between 8 and 9 p.m. So if you're tuning in live, welcome. And if you're watching on record, welcome. I'm going to ask our 6 speakers to introduce the title of their talk, starting with Catherine, please.
The title of my talk is Shooting for the Stars.
Thank you. Ross?
And the title of my talk is Where There's Rhyme, There's Reason.
Thank you. Julia?
And my title is How Have We Become So Removed from Nature and How Do We Get Back?
Thank you. Christina, welcome.
Welcome. Hello. My title of my talk is Are Labels Really Necessary?
And welcome to Kim.
Hi, thanks for the welcome. My talk is Love is Love, Parenting a Transgender Child.
Thank you, Kim. And I'm going to do a Q&A on random dialogues this evening. So, without further ado, can I invite Catherine, please, to take the 6-minute slot? I'll put you into solo layout. Are you ready, Catherine?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Thank you very much. Good luck and enjoy. I'll put you into solo layout. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Hi, I'm Catherine, and as mentioned, the title of my talk is Shooting for the Stars. So this random dialogue is going to be about dreaming, taking deliberate steps forward, or opportunities, as you might say, as well as continuing to believe. And you could also, instead of using that sort of terminology, use resilience, but I'm less of a fan personally of that word, given the buzz around it at the moment. But it does get across what I'm trying to explain. And I'm going to bring this random dialogue to life through talking about myself, which is always a little bit uncomfortable, but here goes. When I was at school, I really wanted to be an astronaut. Space and the planets sparked my imagination and creativity. The beautiful pictures of stars, planets, and even black holes were amazing. It made me wonder what else was out there. Incredible. I really wanted to be an astronaut. I did well at school, but physics, and in particular, mechanics, were not my strong point at all. And I had a challenge around that. And I chose to focus around the things that I was more naturally good at, if that makes sense. However, I continued to dream about being an astronaut, despite it feeling impossible. After graduating from university, I became an accountant. And after training within an accountancy practice, I then took some steps to move away from it. And this is where kind of the deliberate steps around started to come to play. And I moved into the civil service and joined the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. And this was where I had my first contact with space. The UK Space Agency was one of the executive agencies of the department. And from a high level, I first got an understanding of what the exciting things across the UK space sector were happening. So it's some really exciting stuff. I really enjoyed it. Then in April 23, I combined both my training and professional background to become interim finance director at the UK Space Agency. This was fantastic, given my childhood dreams. I learned a huge amount about space. I was able to attend the UK Space Conference. I met astronauts and worked with incredibly passionate people. It was amazing. It was really good. And although I've now left the agency, my story with space is not over. I still work with lots of space sector companies. I'm in contact with lots of people from the sector too. And who knows, one day maybe I will be in space, maybe for a completely different reason from being an astronaut. But who knows? Imagine. This is how I have been shooting for the stars. So I really encourage you to have goals, take deliberate steps towards them, and continue to believe. They may not manifest in the way that you hope or expect. They certainly didn't for me. But there may be other ways of achieving them. Dreams and goals can really inspire, especially when things get really tough. Shoot for the stars. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Well done. Going first. And we have two more speakers, then we have Q&A. So if you are watching and want to chat, please use the chat function. We will get back to you. Okay, Ross, I think you're next. Let's just check my running order. Ross, are you ready? Ross? He's just left the building. He's not there anymore. Ross, are you okay? Let me just get you back. Here we go. Add to stage. There you go. You're back. Are you ready to talk?
I'm totally fine. I just completely screwed that up, for which I apologise.
That's okay.
Hey,
you're back here now. Are you ready to go, or you want to
it's all good.
regroup? All right, perfect. All right, I put you back. Here you go. So show Ross solo layout. Here you go. Good luck.
Hi. I've loved poetry since before I can remember. Over the next few minutes, I'll share a sliver of the poets I admire. Some of you may know them, some you may not. There are others just as good. Poetry for me is the rhythmic art of storytelling, using the richness of language to build emotive images and lock them into memorable rhyme. The poems we often know best today are those set to music. The lyrics of Roger Waters, Tupac Shakur, Carole King and Adele haunt us. I do have a beef, however. Poetry demands discipline. You need to understand the rules. Writing a paragraph of purple prose and splitting it into uneven lines, in my humble view, isn't poetry. Like buying a football and kicking it round a football pitch isn't football. So anyway, let's start with one of my favourites, Menelaus and Helen by Rupert Brooke. This hymn to outlived purpose exposes the, okay, then what happened for the next 50 years that follows every story that you encounter? The not story-worthing part of life, as Matthew Dix might say. If you're unfamiliar with Homer's Iliad or the Trojan Wars, some references may elude you, but the sense ought not to. Brooke begins as Hollywood as you might hope for, all Brangelina. Hot through Troy's ruin, Menelaus broke to Priam's palace, sword in hand, to sate on that adulterous whore a 10 years' hate and a king's honour. Through red death and smoke and cries, and then by quieter ways he strode, till the still innermost chamber fronted him. He swung his sword and crashed into the dim, luxurious bower, flaming like a god. High sat white Helen, lonely and serene. He had not remembered that she was so fair and that her neck curved down in such a way, and he felt tired. He flung the sword away and kissed her feet and knelt before her there, the perfect knight before the perfect queen. Then Brooke asks, what really happened next? So foul the poet, how should he behold that journey home, the long connubial years? He does not tell you how white Helen bears child on legitimate child, becomes a scold, haggard with virtue. Menelaus bold waxed garrulous, and sacked 100 Troys twixt noon and supper, and her golden voice got shrill as he grew deafer, and both were old. Often he wonders why on earth he went Troyward, or why poor Paris ever came. Oft she weeps, gummy-eyed and impotent, her dry shanks twitch at Paris's mumbled name. So Menelaus nagged, and Helen cried, and Paris slept on by Scamander's side. World War I saw an upsurge in poetry as a challenge to censorship. By 1918, the life expectancy of a new pilot was less than 6 weeks. Yet in An Irish Airman Foresees His Death by W.B. Yeats, an Irish nationalist, he cuts through the noise with the immortal optimism of youth. And excuse my bad Irish accent, but for me it just sort of feels important for this poem. I know that I shall meet my fate somewhere amongst the clouds above. Those that I fight I do not hate. Those that I guard I do not love. My country is Kiltartan's cross, my countrymen Kiltartan's poor. No likely end will bring them loss or leave them happier than before. No law nor duty bade me fight, nor public men, nor cheering crowds. A lonely impulse of delight led to this tumult amongst the clouds. I measured up, brought all to mind. The years to come seemed waste of breath, a waste of breath the years behind, in balance with this life, this death. The rhythm and rhyme of poetic expression paints memorable portraits without the use of either brush or canvas. This from one of the early stanzas of the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot. The yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes, the yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes, licked its tongue into the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pools that stand in drains, let fall upon its back the soot that falls from chimneys, slipped by the terrace, made a sudden leap, and seeing that it was a soft October night, curled once about the house and fell asleep. Very feline, it's no surprise that Eliot's Old Possum books of practical cats inspired Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical Cats. As children, learning the complexity of our mother tongue, poetry introduces us to humour and alliteration, teasing our emerging awareness with existential challenges. For me, the best of these is The Wind on the Hill by A.A. Milne, the author of Winnie the Pooh. No one can tell me. Nobody knows where the wind comes from and where the wind goes. It's flying from somewhere as fast as it can. I couldn't keep up with it, not if I ran, but if I stopped holding the string of my kite, it would blow with the wind for a day and a night. And then when I found it, wherever it blew, I should know that the wind had been going there too. So then I could tell them where the wind goes, but where the wind comes from, nobody knows. I shall close with this extract from I Still Rise by Maya Angelou. Never told better than when she reads it herself, she protests with deep and memorable lightness. Her poetry and performances are utterly lyrical. Do you want to see me broken, bowed head, lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops weakened by my soulful cries? Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Thank you for your patience. Back to you, Jane.
Thank you. Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to watching all of these on record and actually really listening to those poems again. Thank you so much. It'd be nice to put them into the newsletter as well. Thank you, Ross. We've got a couple of comments from people tuning in, which I'll save till the Q&A time. I'm going to invite now Julia, please, to share her random dialogue. Are you ready, Julia? I need to just unmute you. You able to unmute?
There we go. Yeah, I'm ready.
Are you okay to go? You going for it?
Yeah.
Okay, good luck. Enjoy. I'll put you into solo.
Thank you. Thank you.
It won't go into solo for some reason. Hang on. Here we go. And I'll just put the right banner up for you. Just 2 secs. Let me just get the banner up for you. There you go.
Hello, everybody. Just a caveat before I start. If anybody's listening and they have got mental health issues or problems with their physical health, please do go and see your GP. I'm going to advocate for being outside in nature, but it's really important that you go and see the GP and get checked for whatever you need to be checked. I just want to say that before I start. So I work in connected to the GP integrated mental health team. And I see a lot of people in my work. I have a lot of patients who are struggling with their mental health, usually depression and anxiety. And I just want to read you some sort of stats so you can get an idea of what's going on. And I guess why I wanted to do this talk was because we have sort of sleptwalked into a mental health crisis in this country. And it's concerning, and how do we walk out of it? So 73% of the population had felt anxious sometimes in the previous 2 weeks. 26% of those with feelings of anxiety felt anxious to the extent that it stopped them from doing the things they liked or the things they wanted to do. And 1 in 5, that's 20% people, felt anxious most or all of the time. So I guess during the course of my work, and I've been in this line of work for a really long time, I started to think about, I think all the time about solutions and how we can think about our well-being on a continuum, on a spectrum. And there's sometimes our health is better than others. So what the cause is, well, I guess I'll leave you to think about what the causes of this could be, and why mental health and anxiety particularly is so prevalent. I'll mention them, some of them: social media, spending more time indoors, anxious adults lead to anxious children, online platforms, children looking for answers online, TikTok. And I'm not saying online is a bad thing. It's just it's become extreme. Particularly our boys and our sons are watching quite detailed men that are likes of Andrew Tate, for example. They're giving them ideas about identity, which is causing them a lot of anxiety. So I guess, so how do we look at this on a bigger, larger picture? I guess firstly, what do we class as nature? And we are spending more time indoors. Nature is the woodlands, forests, waters, rivers, lakes, beaches, canals, window boxes or veg boxes. Nature doesn't have to be outside in a large expansive area. It can be just on a window box, on your window ledge. People who are connected to nature are happier. They tend to have a better understanding of climate change, and they are more likely to recycle, cook fresh food, which also in turn improves our gut health. There's a big correlation between what we eat, the microbiomes in our gut, and where our food comes from. And this is all connected to our mental well-being. So it's really, really important and particularly for children, to give them the idea about where our food comes from. And ultra-processed food is another big factor in causing people severe and enduring mental health. And I hope that we get to a point in society where we can banish ultra-processed food altogether. Surprisingly, people reported improved concentration levels outside, outdoors. Anything outdoors strengthens our immune system and can lower feelings of depression. The morning light is particularly helpful. So the morning light dictates our circadian rhythms, which is our natural body clock, which controls our sleep-wake cycles. So a lot of patients I find that I speak to have real problems sleeping, and sleep has become really, really like a obsession because they're not sleeping enough. I do advocate for being outside, and particularly in that morning light, because it can really, really alter how your body clock works. Plants and trees give off chemicals called photon sides. These photon sides, when we breathe them in, they improve our heart health, reduce stress, as well as offer relief from anxiety and depression, and increase energy levels. So spending time in the forest or amongst trees can be really, really beneficial in terms of reducing also heart rate and stress. It's really, really important. So what can we do? We've become so removed from being outside. This not only impacts on our mental well-being, but we've disconnected from the understanding about climate change and what it's doing to our planet. And the morning light's really important. But the tips I would give you is, if you haven't got a garden, have a veg box on a windowsill, get your hands in the earth. Where you can, walk outside. Even if you just sit in the garden and drink your morning coffee, you're getting the morning light into your eyes, and it's really, really important. It regulates our nervous system and improves the quality of our lives. And I think we need to find a way to get back to nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. So that was exactly. So thank you for tuning in. I've got a couple of comments from people. I'm just going to take down Julia's banner, and then I'm going to go to comments. And we've had a couple of comments from Ian on LinkedIn when he was watching Catherine's talk. So this is how it looks when someone comments. So I can go like this. I can put, there you go. There's Ian. So you can hopefully see his picture. And then he put here, wow, and then shooting for the stars. Wow. So that's what it looks like. So if people comment, if you are watching, please do comment. It's nice to see you. And thank you, Ian, for being with us. So Ian's one of the founding members of Random Dialogues. He's spoken a few times, well, several times on the platform, including last month. And I've just messaged him and said, "Oh, come and join us at the end if you're around." It's always nice if you come and you want to come back again and be part of the crew. So time for a bit of a Q&A before we move on to our next wonderful two speakers. Anyone got any questions they'd like to ask now? You might want to all unmute for the moment.
I have a question for Julia. I was wondering, what's the reaction to when people are seeking help and maybe expecting a slightly different answer when they're told, well, nature might be more of an answer? What's the good? Do you have good reactions to that, or are people skeptical?
It is difficult. If you're in a difficult place with your mental well-being, somebody telling you to go for a walk sometimes isn't taken very well. But it is delivered alongside other options. So we would look at medication, we would look at what they can do, and to be honest, it needs to come from the patient. It's much more likely to be effective if they've said, okay, I could do 10 minutes a day, or I could sit outside with my cup of coffee. It tends to be much more effective. So we tend to it's very person-centered.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask Catherine a question? Just to engage, because it's interesting what you're saying, because I've got two daughters, one of whom has had a purpose and drive and a dream all her life from day one. And the other one has had interests and a more diverse approach to life, but wasn't fixated on what she wanted to achieve and what she wanted to become. And I wondered if you had any brothers or sisters and how much they hate you for knowing what you want.
So I know what I want, or I know what I would like to do, but I'm also not able to achieve what I want to do. So I also have quite a broad background. So I loved sport at school. I was kind of not really sure where I wanted to end up being, but knew I had an interest in business, which is how I ended up being an accountant. So although I kind of was able to have this dream of being an astronaut, I thought it was completely unachievable. So it may be more I don't know, more kind of the inspiring elements of the world around you and picking up on some of the things that I was doing around that. But
driving for it.
So I made active decisions in later life as well. It's not, so I made decisions to completely go in the opposite direction of what my inverted commas dream was. So I wanted to be an astronaut, but I trained to be an accountant. And then I was taking steps to kind of get closer to the industry and do more around it in later life. So again, you don't need to know what you want to do as a child or as you're making the decisions, even like in your 20s. I'd say I've got more aware of what I want the older I've got and reflected back. So I've had this dream as a thread, but it isn't necessarily every decision I've made has been around that dream.
Hindsight.
Mm-hmm. It's about possibilities, isn't it? Exploring possibilities. And I think, you know, the teacher and me, you know, children are having to sort of quite early on decide what they want to do when they grow up. And we've had someone speak on here before about that. And I'm very passionate about not doing that to young people, because it's just it's challenging. But I think, you know, it's about getting out there, doing something like this. You know, who knows when you come and speak about something, and getting out there and connecting with people where these random dialogues can also lead to. I believe in random dialogues for people, young and old. So would anyone else like to comment or reflect before we move on?
I had a question for Julia, which was, does anxiety, as you see it, as it presents to you in your work, does it block into types and categories depending on the age and sex of the people involved?
Types and categories of anxiety?
Yeah. Does it relate to, so postmenopausal versus teenage anxieties, relationships with the world that they live in?
The feelings of anxiety will be similar. The presentation might be different depending on age. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So that when they describe how they feel, that could be the same for most people, but the presentation of that will be different for the different ages.
Do you think there are clearly different drivers or not?
Yes, different factors that would have caused the anxiety. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. So moving on, Christina, are you okay to take the stage?
I will do my best.
Oh, well done. So thank you so much. Christina connected yesterday, and we got her involved to speak. So thank you for having the courage to join us today and be in the room. So I'm going to put you into
afterwards how I feel about it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Here we go. Solo layout.
So I did not realize I had a disability until I was in my late 40s. I had unknowingly developed workarounds for my limitations. I found the restriction of sitting still in school really, really difficult, and learning in particular was very hard for me. From a very early age, I was all-rounder in athletics. I was the swimming captain. I swam for my school. I used to swim in the Irish Sea every day, literally to practice to go into swimming competitions. At 11, a teacher asked me why I was copying from my friend, and I told her I couldn't see the blackboard. She alerted my parents to something was wrong, and eventually I got to see an optician. My eyesight was so poor that I had unknowingly relied on color recognition rather than letters. Shops, food packages, and signs were all a blur. They just were colors. But I knew the colors of everything, so the fact that I did not see the names on the packets was missed by the people around me. Though the world opened up when I had my glasses, the damage was done. I already felt stupid. I fell behind at school and began skipping class, and by the age of 16, with no qualifications, I literally left school. I went to shorthand college, and for some reason or other, the symbols of learning shorthand really appealed to me, but I drifted from job to job. And as a single parent, when I was about 24, a friend of mine said to me, why don't I become a teacher? I said, well, I don't have any qualifications. And she said to me, as a mature student, you have to take an entrance exam. She said, go and get yourself a book of IQ tests and then sit the exam, which I did. And it was that got me onto a teaching program for dance drama. I was still not reading. And what was really interesting, I just thought I didn't like reading, didn't realize that I actually found reading difficult. So I set all my friends up in reading groups, which I attended every week. I went to every lecture that there was. And fortunately, I had one of those memories that absorbed things, and that helped me to pass my exams. I didn't like teaching. I went on and became a humanistic psychology, another experiential learning, which meant I had to practice, and have lots of conversations around what I was learning. It wasn't until 1995 I had chosen a modeling project when I was doing my NLP training that I wanted to learn how people read and assimilated things, because I was aware that people really loved reading and I wanted to have that skill. At this point, I didn't have it at all. And talking to avid readers, I realized that what they were doing was making pictures as they were reading things so that they could fit things in and they knew whether or not something fitted or not. I have aphantasia and I don't make mental pictures of things that are not present. So this didn't work for me. And I spoke to the trainer who said to me, "What is it you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I would like to be able to read and process and understand what I'd reading. And as I was doing that, I was moving my hand along the page as if I was trying to feel the words." And she told me the story of a group of students who wanted to become a baseball scholarship to an American university, but they needed maths. And she realized that they didn't actually know how to do maths, so she taught them Braille. And when she taught them Braille, they then were able to do maths, and they were able to get a place as a student on a basketball scholarship. The interesting thing about that was when she was telling me this story, I got very, very emotional. There was something about the feeling, the reading that really sort of got to me. And eventually, through this process, I understood that I was not stupid, but that I needed a different way of developing understanding that did not include reading. So I labeled myself as having dyslexia and a processing disorder. Yes, I can read, but can I make sense of something I know nothing about? I can't. I need someone to interpret it for me. And it took me years and years and years to say to people, "I find reading very difficult. Can you please read this and tell me what it means?" I can write for England. It's like it just pours out of me, but I'm unable to read it over, what I've written, and whether or not I can edit it. I have somebody who will do that for me. So would a label have helped me? Perhaps it would. It would have spared me years of feeling ashamed that I couldn't do something that everybody else seemed to take for granted, and for feeling stupid for not being able to fit in. But as I look back at overcoming my challenges without a label, defining it helped me to build a lot of resilience. It built my inner strength. It built my creativity, and actually a desire to learn new things by doing them rather than by reading about them. And I have a thirst for knowledge, and I find ways to learn things that actually are not about reading them in a book. I developed really useful and positive ways of learning things and being able to pass that learning on to others. Maybe it could have been easier. I just don't know. Labels, I believe, can confine or empower. For me, understanding my strengths was the only validation I needed. Acceptance that I do things differently, but that makes me unique. And I believe everyone is unique. And rather than labeling things, acceptance of how I do things is, in my view, better than having a label that explains why I am the way I am. And that's my bit of story. I don't know how long I've spent. So that's my story.
Thank you for sharing your story and for being here. Amazing. Kim, are you ready to take the solo stage?
I am, yes.
Okay, let me get the banner ready. And let me find the solo there. There you go. Over to you. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you for having me here tonight. So, as you may have guessed by the title, I have a transgender child. I'm one of those overly permissive parents you may have read about who didn't say, "Don't be silly, darling, it's just a phase," but actually instead listened to what my 10-year-old daughter had to say when she told me the bravest and most important thing about herself. I think I'm a boy. I called my talk Love is Love because there does seem to be a great deal of debate about whether as a parent you should accept / carry on loving your child if they come to you and say they're trans, gay, non-binary, or anything else you weren't quite expecting. Personally, I don't think our love is conditional on our kids turning out exactly as we imagined in our heads in anything they might choose in life, career, partner, or where to live, or indeed their identities. One of the more toxic things about how things are turning out for trans children currently is that everyone talks about them, but not really to them or their families. Most people who spout off negativity, and there are a lot of them, have never even met a trans child, never mind listen to their lived experiences. So I like to try and address this now and again where I can, which is why I'm here tonight. It's now almost 9 years since our child told us she felt like a boy. It was an enormous thing to get our heads around when the words were finally said. "Mummy, I feel like a boy inside, I really do." But I didn't ever think, well, I can't love you then. It certainly wasn't a thought that crossed my mind then or ever in the years since. We very quickly realised by listening to our child that things had been held in for quite a long time, 3 or 4 years, whilst we were totally in the dark. But we had no reason to disbelieve the very genuine and articulate way the distress was being described to us. This was clearly something very real, not a delusion, very, very real. Our first and simplest thing to do was to alleviate that distress. For our child, that was to let her take the action she so desperately wanted, which was extremely simple. She wanted to cut her hair, which was already pretty short, and wear boys' clothes. Literally just clothes and a haircut. The first time we went clothes shopping was an absolute revelation. Contrary to previous times where buying clothes and shoes had been really stressful, nothing was ever right for all kinds of reasons. This trip was a joy. I'm going to refer to him as he from now on because in that moment, that's when really she turned into a boy. He knew exactly what he wanted and how he wanted to wear it. He grew 5 inches in happiness in that changing room. It was a kind of smack forehead moment. In the past, we'd been trying to buy the least feminine clothes possible in the girls section of the shop, but ultimately we'd just been shopping in the wrong section all the time. It wasn't long before we needed to start using him, he, and his, because using she and her when you had a boy standing in front of you just felt silly and wrong. And that was probably the hardest thing to get right. To understand this, have a go at trying to call your partner a different name or pronoun for a day, a whole day. And you'll soon realise exactly how difficult it is to undo the habit that's been there for a very long time. We got it wrong all the time for a long time. It was such a hard shift to make. But we just said sorry and corrected and moved on. I would say it was over a year before it started to stick. But even after that, I would still slip up occasionally and use the wrong pronoun. Soon he needed a new name to match the pronoun, and he managed to choose this himself very easily one day. So it all did happen quite quickly because once the floodgates were open, he was just running with it. In his world, he'd been waiting a really long time. It didn't matter that it was new to us. He knew where he wanted to go, and it was up to us to just catch up. Some people might think, why would you let a 10-year-old child lead with all this? A child. Well, everything we did at that point was reversible. If he'd wanted, it would have been easy to grow his hair back, change clothes. He wasn't doing anything that couldn't be undone if needed. There didn't seem to be any harm with going the way he wanted to go. We did ask lots of questions. Was he happy? Did he want to go back to living as a girl? Was he definitely sure this is the way forward? The answers never changed. Yes, this was all good, thank you. And no, he didn't want to look back. We were managing all this by ourselves, by the way, because actual professional help is almost impossible to access for trans kids. It was almost a year before we saw any professional. And that was back in the day when there was an actual proper NHS service on offer. Things have changed now. There is barely any help. And we know kids personally who've been on a waiting list for over 4 years. Well, that's a whole other talk. 6 minutes probably wouldn't be enough time for that either. Anyway, back to my son and where we are now. He's 19 now, has been on testosterone for a year, having gone through a long and upsetting female puberty, which he couldn't do anything about. He's thrilled now at finally having a deeper voice and facial hair, and he feels finally on the path to being the fully male person he desires. It's a slow process, but he's in it for the long haul, and I think the last 9 years, without a backwards glance, have shown us that. Parenting our son through his gender transition has not been a breeze. It's meant a lot of the dreams we had being flushed away and a new future imagined. It's meant looking at 10 years of our family photos and feeling like we were living a lie through quite a number of them. It's meant taking down baby and toddler photos because any new friends we or our son make don't always know the past, and having it plastered on our walls outs him unnecessarily. It means it takes my son absolutely ages to get his clothes just right every day before he can leave the house. It means he doesn't ever go swimming because it exposes too much of his female-shaped body. It means every GP appointment or hospital visit, it includes explanations before a physical examination can be done. Yes, doctor, he is male, but he does have breasts. We've actually had some quite upsetting interactions with some ignorant professionals who should know better. Everything in life has an added layer of complexity. But guess what? He wouldn't change any of it, and neither would we. And we still love him. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Kim, for sharing your story, your family story. So we've enjoyed 5 talks this evening. I was going to do a sort of Q&A about random dialogues, perhaps, but perhaps by Q&Aing me, or I can talk about random dialogues, we can talk about the random dialogues you've had this evening, and it can sort of flow that way, if that's okay. So has anyone got any questions about random dialogues or the talks? I was just looking through the book writing itself. So what I do is I put in, since 2020, the virtual talks that we've enjoyed here. I started this in 2017 in a pub, in a bowling club actually, and we had about 15 people in the circle, including poetry, and my father played the guitar, and it sort of was a really nice sort of start to the Random Dialogues journey. And then each time we have these talks, I put the picture and the links and everything into a document, with the view that one day I'll get organised and perhaps publish it as an ebook or something. It's not necessarily my forte. I'm good at documenting, but not always sort of maybe publishing it. So hopefully you'll be part of that story, all of you. But perhaps I need to create a goal and a dream for it.
I just got a couple of things, just one for Christina, one for Kim. One Christina, if it doesn't help, but I do have some experience having been diagnosed at the age of 6 with ADHD, when the choice at the time was normal or retard. And my parents subsequently went to the grave without ever saying anything but, oh, you had that hearing test. But actually found out 60 years later that I had significant ADHD of that age. Don't want to discuss any of that now because it's not what it's about, but just to say the clarity of knowing that you were never wrong is very liberating.
Yeah.
And well, just say, oh, sorry, you were going to say.
Well, the understanding that I couldn't learn because I couldn't see anything, not because I was too stupid to learn. And that kind of, I went to a little private school with 10 children in my class, and nobody picked that up till I was 11. I used to stand in the dunce's corner with the dunce's hat on and be told that, you know, to mean I was a bright but lazy child.
You should be in the Irish Foreign Office negotiating trade deals, because you got away with it for far too long.
Probably. But I didn't, you know, it's like, you don't know what you don't know. And I just learned, you know, when my mum said, can you go and get the packet of salt? I knew the packet of salt was red, yellow and white.
Which teaches you something about learning, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Huge amount about learning. I was a hopeless teacher, by the way. When I came to be a teacher, I couldn't do that. So I facilitated adults instead. It was much easier than facilitating kids. Yeah.
Thank goodness we've moved on from dunce's hat and standing in the corner.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. I mean, honestly, it was brutal, really, I suppose, in many ways. And I spent my time swimming, running. I was the hockey captain, the tennis captain. I was really excelled at sports. And, you know, that was my outlet. I hate sports now, by the way, but, you know, that was my outlet. So, and then, you know, to cap it all, I had detaching retinas. And eventually had my, because I had cataracts, that's why I couldn't see anything, had my cataracts done when I was about 45. So, you know, it took me a long, long time. And, you know, that kind of jumping around and not being able to concentrate, not being able to learn, and was really tough, you know, to me.
Compensating and masking is really quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You just find ways around it. I mean, I've been run over once because I didn't see the car till it hit me.
You won't even hear it nowadays.
No, that's true. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, so that is very interesting how people compensate and mask. But I don't know whether or not having a label would have helped. You know what I mean? When I was young, I think finding my way to deal with that sort of stuff actually was much more beneficial for me, because it gave me some skills that I wouldn't have had, I don't think. Yeah, sorry, I've taken up enough time. So.
I barged in at the thing. I just wanted to say, Kim, that's a lovely story. It's a really, really nice way of sharing. I've got a friend of mine whose son was originally their daughter, and he's now married with a child, and they're all very happy and everything, but went through a very difficult transition. And she said she had to sit down and write herself a letter to say goodbye to her daughter, so she could cope with finding she had a son.
Yeah, well, I actually, funnily enough, wrote a poem. I'm not sure what you'd think of it as a.
As long as it rhymes, you're fine.
No, it doesn't rhyme. That's the problem. I'm not sure how you would view my exhibit of poetry, but anyway, I did write a poem one morning. Just very bizarrely, woke up and felt like I needed to blur some stuff out, and then I actually turned it into a short film. So that was my sort of processing of it at the time. That was probably about 9 months after he came out, and everything was feeling just really overwhelming. So yeah, there's everybody deals with it in a different way.
I'll share your film into our little group of, you know, I'll put us into a little pod on LinkedIn or something, and then we can quite often with these talks we then can chat afterwards as well and keep connected.
Okay. Happy for you to do that.
Thank you. Christina, I think I fitted it, you know, I struggled and I didn't have a label until maybe in my 40s, and I haven't properly been diagnosed, but it was through sort of being a mum that I discovered. I dropped A-levels, struggled with exams, went and did a T-line secretarial course, went to the world of work, freelanced all the time, numerous jobs, story of my life, because I've always found my sequencing and memory difficulties quite challenging, and that's hence even random dialogues is about that. It's that lacking in structure for me. It's being able to free flow and not be too structured. But I think to have had a label would have would have maybe made me sort of feel less stupid all the time. Like I never knew what I was like, couldn't keep up with everybody else, and why could they all listen? I couldn't, and I used to listen and go, "What's everyone just said? And what's gone on?" I've just completely lost it already. And I'd be like, "Right, I'm going to really listen now. I'm going to be really," and I'd be like, don't know what you just said." And then I'd be reports, concentration. But girls, I think, don't get picked up so well. With things. So I don't know. The label would have been useful.
Would you ever think of getting yourself assessed now, Jane?
I could do. I mean, I sort of kind of tick a lot of the boxes, but also at the moment, I'm not being funny, but it's quite a trendy thing, I think, to a lot of get like diagnosed at the moment. So many people have said, "Oh, I've got ADHD." And I'm like, actually, part of me with the ADHD goes, "I don't want to do that."
It has become quite fashionable and quite driven to part. If you want to belong to a tribe, you need something that's similar to everyone else. You've got to have something, a bit like the old BT-ology sort of ads. But I also don't think the Americans also say, well, if you've got ADHD, you've got a superpower. It's clearly bollocks. But the Brits go, oh, we can medicate that. Also, it's a solution either. But I do think that with something like ADHD, just knowing that when you know you've always been marching to a different drum, and this also comes back to what Kim was talking about, knowing what that you have marched to a different drum and that you thought you weren't and you thought you couldn't, just frees you up. It takes a lot of doubt away, and you can just get on with it.
I think the interesting thing for me was learning that I had this aphantasia, because I couldn't understand. You were reading that poem, for example, which I imagine was full of imagery that people can see. I can't see any of that. I just hear her.
Nor can I. I have aphantasia as well. I can't. So people say, you want to meditate, imagine a beach. And I'm going,
no.
Not a sausage. Somewhere in the back of my head, I can see a vague poster from something, but nothing.
And I think that was sort of very liberating for me, because that whole thing about, people would be moving on quickly. And then, Catherine, when you talked about your dream as a child, I thought, I didn't have anything like that. I had no visual sort of thought about what I might want to do. Even today, I don't. You know what I mean? My life is, well, let's see what happens today. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen today. Sometimes I think, I don't know how I got to the age I am now. You know what I mean? Because it's every day is just a new day.
So you're a groundhog.
Yeah, not quite a groundhog, because every day is not the same. Fortunately, I make sure.
Julia, you wanted to say something.
Sorry, Julia.
I was going to say I struggle with it being called a disorder, because it's not a disorder. For me, it's a personality type. So going back to the nature analogy, the people with an ADHD personality type would have been the doers and the thinkers, and they would have been getting the things done. They would have been lighting the fire and catching rabbits, and they would have been doing. And so we've moved into a society in a time when that personality type kind of isn't needed as much. And so people, and I listen to teenagers all the time going, I just don't fit in. Well, you don't fit in because we've created a society where you don't fit any longer. And I really sort of don't get why it's called a disorder, because it's just giving people a label that's quite negative.
You're not supposed to fit in if you're a teenager.
Exactly. But we've created a society where you have to kind of fit, and it's not
fair.
I think
the thing that I find interesting, and this is an aside, and it may be a totally different thing, but I hear an awful lot of people talk about telling me who and what I am and why I am and what I'm like. And I would never, ever turn around to anyone else and tell them they are or have or whatever they are, because everyone is different. But the reason I think, looking back on it now, is you are just the way you are. But if you're of a certain type,
and it's okay.
Other people, it's not about being okay. I don't care about being okay. I don't need to be accepted. I just am the way I am. But you do acquire other issues from the way people around you treat you. If they treat you as stupid, if they treat you as an outsider, if they treat you as having no value, If they treat you as different constantly, you have two imperatives. One is to learn how to disguise yourself, and the other one is to learn is to effectively, you acquire insecurities and changes to your behavior and your self-belief as you go through life, but it's got nothing to do with your ADHD. It's entirely to do with your response to a negative environment.
Absolutely.
In my view. So yes, ADHD, in my view, is a way of being, in the same way that so-called, and I've never met a normal, but because they're mostly arseholes. But there are a lot of people out there who, we're all the way we are, and we all got to find a space for ourselves.
Absolutely.
And people collectively who maybe can't even find a space for themselves join up and gang up on other people. It's just the unfortunate nature of hot housing kids. That's a bit of a dramatic, anyway, whatever. In defense of labels, it's good to know that you've got one on the middle of your forehead and it's a Marmite jar.
Right, I'm going to say goodbye. Goodbye from Random Dialogues 30. And I do hope that you will return and speak again, and that you will hopefully share this out, and hopefully someone will hear your message or the messages shared tonight, and connect with them in some way. You never know, do you? Just what you shared, who it could impact and how it could support, or reassure somebody. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here.
Thank you
for hosting us. Thank you.
Very nice to meet everyone.
And I'll just put this banner back up, so it's just on there for the ending, and I'll end the live stream, and then it takes us back into the broadcast room, and I'll stay around for 10 minutes or so. So I'll keep it open. If anyone wants to stay and chat, please do. Otherwise, I hope to I'll connect you all in other ways.
Take care. Bye. Bye.